This isn't about rigid rules or perfect routines or having a rule of absolutes, but it's about showing up with intention and building trust with your child and with yourself. Hey, Mama, are you feeling like you're walking on eggshells around your little one? Does every day feel like a battleground from breakfast to bedtime? You're not alone. If meltdowns, sensory sensitivities, and communication challenges are turning your days upside down, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Sensory Savvy Mama, the podcast for moms raising neurodivergent little ones. I'm your host, Victoria, and I get it. I've been there. The endless research, the frustrating appointments, the feeling like no one understands what you and your child are going through. Here, we ditch the cookie cutter advice and embrace the power of understanding your child's unique sensory needs within the context of your family. We'll dive into practical strategies, expert insights, and real-life stories to help you create a calmer, more connected family life. Because you deserve to feel empowered, not exhausted. Let's ditch the overwhelm and discover the joy of raising a sensory kid in a neurodiverse family. You ready? Let's go. Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Sensory Savvy Mama. I'm Victoria Johnson, an occupational therapist, neurodivergent mama, and founder of the Edison Collective, where we support intuitive parenting, nervous system first tools, and all things sensory. In today's episode, we're stepping into a topic that is so often loaded with guilt, judgment, and overwhelm. Screens. Before you jump to conclusions or X out this episode, I just want you to listen in. Screens are a very, very polarized topic in the parenting world. There are people who are absolutely against screens and don't have any, and then there are people who use screens all the time, maybe a little too much. How do you know what works for your family, especially if you're raising a neurodivergent child where screens may feel like one of their few safe places? I use screens, not randomly, not endlessly, but I use them when I needed to catch my breath. And it was reminding me of the time when I was in Israel and how just a little bit of time where your child is safe and entertained and it's not dependent on you, how liberating that can feel, but also how necessary it was for my own nervous system regulation. And so how do you know, especially if you have a neurodivergent child where a screen is like one of their safe places and you don't feel like taking it away is the right option and you need to have that as a tool in your toolkit? What is the boundary and how do I know what is best for my child based on their sensory needs, based on our lifestyle, based on the things that we have going on? So I want to talk about some of the things that I often see when I'm working with families and what we go through in this process. This is not another how much is too much conversation. I think every family uses it differently and has a different capacity for how much is too much for them. I don't believe that screens are inherently bad. In fact, I think they can be incredibly helpful, they can be supportive, and they can even support regulation when used with intention. Now, before we get any further into this, I want to say that if your child or if a child you're working with or you know, if they use a screen for communication, even if it's not consistent, even if it's just sometimes, that child needs to always have access to that screen. When that screen has their communication device on it, even if they're still learning it, I think it's very important that isn't restricted. Now, other things on the app you might want to restrict based on what you decide and determine to be best for your family. But if your child is using a screen for communication, I think you need to have screens always readily available for them so that they can communicate when they are ready and feeling able to, and when they have something they want to say. The thing that I often find missing from the conversation about screens is this: what happens after screen time? And this is what I want to dive in today is how do we use screens with intention and not just unconsciously putting them on and then, oh no, the mom guilt kicks in. They've been on a screen for too long. Quick, we need to get off of there, and not having a plan for transitioning off. Many neurodivergent kids have trouble with transitions, especially when transitioning from a preferred activity to a non-preferred activity, or a screens are often sensory stimulating in a good way, but how do you transition off of that? And that's what we're diving into today. How do we use screens with intention and plan for the often overlooked moment that causes the biggest battle, that transition away from the screen? My first kind of aha moment with a screen, I was doing my capstone project for my occupational therapy degree, and I was in Israel, and I was at a clinic for children who had very rare genetic abnormalities. And some of these children had severe seizure disorders, and to the point that it hugely impacted their growth and their development. And one little girl that was there who was nonverbal, she was, I think, 10 or 11 at the time, but looked to be in the body of a 5-year-old because of the storm of seizures that she experienced every day. And how when the clinic introduced her to a screen, she all of a sudden could watch a video. And then they noticed that she would go find the same video again. This was a child who wasn't responding to very much input, who wasn't showing a whole lot of interaction. And yet she had a huge skill. And this allowed so much reprieve and respite from needing constant supervision all the time. It was the therapist who had been working with her said, oh, she has to be with somebody or in a safety chair kind of situation because her seizures come on so quickly and so violent, she can get hurt really quickly. And so her mom has to always be with her. And if not her mom, then they have to have somebody else. They don't have somebody apart from the immediate family who is able to manage this. And so, except when she comes here to our clinic and they had a day program that they ran Monday through Friday. And I remember thinking, oh, at the time I had come from my own personal upbringing was that like TV was bad and we had very limited access to television. We could watch movies, but even that was very carefully curated by my parents. And I remember watching this and seeing, like recognizing how big that was that this little girl could figure out a way to navigate YouTube and find videos that she liked and find them again and again. And how we could create a setup for her where she could sit and be supported and safe, and the iPad be held up, or the tablet, whatever she had, held up so that if she was to go into a seizure, she was safe. And how the OT that I was there to see was like, for the first time, her mom's able to step out of the room and make a cup of tea by herself or go to the bathroom by herself. And this is huge because we have been trying to find something for years that she could do, that she would engage with, that wouldn't overstimulate her and send her into more seizures. And this has been it. And that really stuck with me of how powerful and helpful for the child, but also for the parent. Fast forward a decade later, I was a new mom living in a foreign country with no support. I was deep into postpartum depression and my nervous system was fried. I felt like I was walking on the cliffs of burnout, and any day would just send me spiraling over. And I used screens, not randomly, not endlessly, but I used them when I needed to catch my breath. And it was reminding me of the time when I was in Israel and how just a little bit of time where your child is safe and entertained and it's not dependent on you, how liberating that can feel, but also how necessary it was for my own nervous system regulation. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what shows I was okay with. I was clear on setting a time limit, and that the purpose of using the screen was intentional. But I still felt so much guilt. And There were two different people who I heard around that time, and they said some things that shifted everything for me, that screens are tools. They aren't good or bad. It's how we use them. It's what we think of them. And the other was that screens can be really helpful so long as they are not the substitute for real social interaction. So if you're using a screen in lieu of interacting with your child, then we need to look at that more closely. But here's the thing is, we were interacting. I just had gotten to the end of my rope and I desperately needed to regulate my nervous system. I wasn't at a place where I could interact any further. I needed a break. And I didn't have anyone I could rely on or help out in that. And so finding something that my child could do that was safe, that was easy for them to access, that I could monitor was a lifeline. I am not here to judge you or shame you. There is no such thing as a bad mom label in this space. I just want to have some practical wisdom and being conscientious and intentional about how we use screens. Here's the thing. The issue in most homes isn't screen use. It's what happens after. We give it to them to avoid the meltdown, right? If we're in a pinch hit and we are trying to get through the grocery store, or we need to go start dinner. And so you hand over the screen so that they can do that without needing you. So you have a little bit of freedom to finish what you need to finish. But then at some point, you have to move away from the screen. The screen has to go off. You have to come back to the table. You have to leave the grocery store. That meltdown that was happening at the beginning now comes back in full force. The refusal to let it go, the disconnection of, why would you take this away from me? And it makes sense, right? Because screens are often a preferred activity. They're predictable, they're engaging. And for many neurodivergent kiddos, they feel safe. Their sensory system feels safe when they're playing on a screen or watching their favorite show. And so having to pull that away without having a plan in place can be such a shock to their system, because we're putting them right back in the situation that was so overwhelming or dysregulating to begin with without a plan. So I want to talk about kind of 3 steps to transition smoothly. Essentially a before, during, and after. Before screen time, before you start using a screen time. And this is something that you can think about as a mom. How do I want to use a screen with my kids? What is the purpose of screen time for us? Is it educational? We're only going to use it for educational purposes. There are a ton of really great apps and access on screens, a tablet, a laptop, whatever. I work in school-based teletherapy. Most of my students access our therapy sessions via a screen. They access most of their education via a screen. And so to say screens are bad, no. Therapy and your education and those things, these are not bad things. These are really great. It's allowing you to study and learn in a place where you feel safe at home, not having to go into a classroom. Get really clear on, how are we going to use screens? Are they only for education? Are they for recreation and entertainment? Do we use them when we need to rest? Do we use them as a visual timer? Do we use them for interacting in Zoom calls with family members or FaceTime? How are we using this? What are the ways that we want to use screens? The next thing is to set a container. Based on your child's developmental age, there are certain recommendations on how much screen time they should have. And you have to consider those things, but also your own child and what their needs are. There's some good studies that under the age of 2, that isn't helpful. However, again, back to what I said at the beginning, if your child is using a screen for a communication device, and that's one way that you're helping them learn to communicate, then that changes the conversation. How are you using it, and what is the amount that you're going to use it in? But also look at that next to, what is their attention span like? What does that look like in other areas for them? And so use that as a gauge for where they're at and how much you want to do in a given setting. The other thing is to let them know before the screen time starts. Let them know what is happening next. We are only watching one episode. We will only watch 20 minutes. And then we are going to go outside. And then we are going to go do this. And then this is what's going to happen after. And be ready to co-regulate and help them through that transition. Now, during the screen time, set a timer for yourself or for them, whether you have a visual timer that they can watch, but you need to also be consistent. If you say we're only going to watch one episode, you need to make sure that it's only one episode. You want your words to hold truth for them so that they know and they can depend on you. That is safe. That's predictable. That is, I know that when mom says 20 minutes, she means only 20 minutes. And she's going to set a timer. And when that timer goes off, I know that the screen is going to have to go away. This is predictable. This is safety for a nervous system. This is knowing I can trust my mom to do what she says she's going to do. And this also helps them know if I just throw a fit a little bit longer, I can have more screen time. Okay, so then I know that I need to throw a fit when this is over so I can get more. If you are not consistent, you are priming their nervous system to effectively go to battle for what it wants, right? It's more regulated. It feels more safe when it's interacting in screen time. It's got the right amount of stimulation, the right amount of demand. And now you're asking them to transition back into an environment that maybe has higher demand on them, that maybe is more sensory overwhelming or dysregulating. And if you are not consistent and clear in helping them, one, transition back into that, co-regulating with them or providing supports and accommodations to do that, but also if you are wishy-washy or not consistent in that, they are going to fight for the thing that is easier for them. Does that make sense? So how you present and how you use a screen can have a huge impact on your connection with your child, because this is one way that you are showing up for them. This is one way that you are providing a resource that's helpful, that's fun. But this is also one way that you can really quickly dysregulate a child's nervous system. And that doesn't feel good for anyone. What does that look like when you transition, when your child has to transition away from a screen? What does that look like? What level of support did they need to be able to set that down and walk away from it and transition into the next thing? And sometimes that means that you have to come sit with them and be right next to them and co-regulate with them through that and help them transition into the next thing. But here's what I don't want you to do. Don't just turn it off and hope for the best. Don't let mom guilt jump up and go, we've done this for too long. I can't believe I let them watch this long. Oh my gosh, we have to turn off the screens right now. Everyone, turn it off. Make sure there is a bridge. There is stepping stones of transition to get them to the next thing. Maybe it's a sensory friendly activity that they love, something familiar, something regulating. Maybe it's a snack. Maybe they need you to just cuddle with them for a minute. After you turn off the screen, go sit down with them, cuddle with them, ask them about it. Maybe it's they need to go swing for a little bit to regulate and then transition into the next thing. What helps them transition through? What does those supports and accommodations look like? And then you need to keep your word. If you said that the screen would go off, you have to follow through. The safety that they feel during screen time use should be mirrored also in the safety and predictability that you provide in helping them transition afterwards into the next thing. And this comes back to some of the earlier conversations that we've had about attachment and attunement parenting. When you have a child who has differences in sensory processing, it is so important that you are more attuned to their sensory needs and that they have secure and safe attachment with you so that they can know that they can trust you to help them through these dysregulating things, that you can be there to support them when it gets really hard and when it gets really overwhelming and when they're not sure how to regulate, that you are there to provide that co-regulation. This isn't about rigid rules or perfect routines or having a rule of absolutes, but it's about showing up with intention and building trust with your child and with yourself. So this is the micro shift for this week. When you think about how you use screens in your home and look at your plan for the after first. How are you going to transition off of that screen think about that and start to get a plan in place for that before you ever use the screen. What does that transition look like? How will you signal it to your child? What supports would your child need to make that shift easier? If you're looking for help creating a nervous system first routine that actually works for your family, start with the Clarity Lab. It's a self-paced guide to understanding your child's sensory system and their patterns. And just for November, I'm opening up a special offer called the Sensory Breakthrough. It's a easy, low demand, high value option. You fill out 2 forms, a standardized sensory questionnaire and an informal Google form, and I'll send you a personalized analysis of how you're checking sensory input and where their biggest challenges and strengths lie. No Zoom calls, no appointments needed. And I have to tell you that the people who have done this, when I had this offer opened a year and a half ago, have said it was the biggest light bulb moment of finally understanding, oh, that's why they do what they do. That's why this is so hard. That's why they're really good at this. And if you're ready to have that help and to have that insight on your child, this is what you need. And it's only going to be available for the month of November. So sign up right away. Link is in the show notes. I love supporting moms like you and reclaiming the family life that you want, the confidence and the connection that you want to show up as the mom you want to be without the mom guilt and the shame spirals. It's not fun being a mom sometimes because of all the external pressure on, oh, I should be doing this, or I shouldn't do that, or I've done too much of this, or I didn't get this right and I should have done that better. It is a work in progress. And being a mom sometimes exposes some of our own hurts and frustrations, especially when you're trying to do things differently. When the thing that you want to honor and uphold was once the thing that you got punished for. That takes a lot of inner work and internal courage to show up from that place. And if that's you, I just want to send you like a big hug, but also you're doing amazing. You're doing it. You're showing up, and nobody gets it right all the time. And you shouldn't expect that of each other. You wouldn't expect that of your best friend. So why do you expect that for yourself? But look at how far you've come. Look at what you have done. Look at the ways that you have shown up for your child, where you have had that deep connection that just makes everything melt away. It's so cool when you can see what your child needs and you are attuned to them and you can meet them where they're at and you have this deep and rich connection. There is nothing like that. Remember, you don't need a perfect plan, just one little intentional moment. And you've already taken one by being here. And when you take another little small intentional moment, you start to create these little shifts, ripples that change the entire landscape of your family to be what you always hoped for and dreamed of. I'm so proud of you. That's it for this week's episode of the Sensory Savvy Mama. I hope you're walking away with some actionable tips and a renewed sense of hope for your journey. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. Your child is amazing, and you are the perfect mom for them. If you love this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other moms like you find our community and lets us know what you want to hear. If you want to connect further, you can find us on Instagram or subscribe to our newsletter for inspiration, exclusive sensory tips, behind-the-scenes glimpses, and so you don't miss out on any new episodes. We are all in this together, Mama. I love you, and I'm so proud of you. One last thing before we go. While I am an occupational therapist, I am not your child's occupational therapist. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. As the parent, you know your child best. So please use your best judgment and consult with your child's healthcare providers before exploring any of the strategies or ideas shared here. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out.